All right, so welcome to the Feedbackwrench podcast. We talk about entrepreneurship. I'm here with Drake Vant Hul of Performance Financial out of Iowa. And we just want to tell your story. We want this to be an encouragement for people who are trying to start their own accounting firm, their own business, whatever that is. I'm Rob. I own Feedbackwrench. But Drake,
I love this. This is
how you doing, man?
One of my favorite things to do. I tell everybody I don't love accounting because I like debits and credits and prepping tax returns. It's because I like talking business. So if we could do a little bit of that today, I think it's going to be a good Friday.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Now, we've worked with each other for a couple of years now. But Drake, why don't you do, if you can, you got 90 seconds to give us a survey of like where you've been and where you're at.
Drake Vant Hul grew up in a small town, northwest Iowa, kind of, farmland up there. I like to call it God's country. Really was introduced to entrepreneurship from the get-go. My mom was a hairstylist. We had a salon in our house growing up. My grandpa owned a business. My other grandpa was a farmer. My parents started the first 24/7 tanning salon when I was in junior high in the state of Iowa. And so kind of grew up around that. I was always mowing lawns. In college, I started my first business fixing cell phone screens. Great market, by the way. A lot of kids breaking their phones there. Out of college, moved down to Des Moines, Iowa. Started my first big boy job. Worked for a pretty large firm nationally, not big four, but top 50. We had a pretty big Midwest presence. Learned a ton there. Really got engaged, and that's part of my entrepreneurship growth as well. I acquired my first business, became another partner in like an ice fishing go-kart business. Helped scale that, and since we've exited and closed that down. And then back in 2021, decided it was time to go start my own accounting practice. Always loved accounting. I love accounting because I think it's the language of business. But like I said earlier, I don't love it because I love debits and credits. My passion is consulting, talking with clients, interpreting that information that accounting gives you to help them ultimately make the best decisions. So here we are today, man.
So you're a CPA. What did you study in college?
So I needed those extra credits for the CPA exam. So you want to talk about going from like the hardest business classes to maybe some of the easiest classes at college. It was kind of a stark difference, but I loved it.
No. That's funny. That's so funny. No commentary on the your typical.
Yeah, it was. It was the perfect piece to put on a resume because everybody else like got a finance minor or an economics minor, and I'm like, no, I like kind of know how to talk to people and like have some training in that space. So.
That's awesome. So 2021 you started, and now you're a dad, you're an entrepreneur. Give us a snapshot of what the business and life looks like right now.
Really went full-time into it and left my job in June of 21. So a little over 3 years now. Have 2 kids at home. We currently have 7 employees in 2 locations. So we have a location in Des Moines, Iowa, and a second location in Pella, Iowa. We've got probably about 350 clients that we work with. We focus really on kind of 3 core services, bookkeeping, business advisory, and tax prep. Really, though, our main focus is the advisory piece. And in our VTO, I don't know if you're an EOS guy at all, Rob, but in our VTO, our 10-year plan is really to be more of that consulting, fractional CFO type practice, but working our way to that. We see in the next 5 to 10 years in the accounting space that the bookkeeping and the tax prep is going to go away. Maybe not completely, but a good chunk of it, technology is going to wipe out. So 1, we're preparing our clients today for that reality. But 2, if we can start, and this is what I say when I'm talking to somebody new, is you got to start flexing that review and analyzing muscle today, because that's going to be your differentiator in the future. So a lot of our clients, their differentiator today, frankly, is they have books and their other competition just doesn't have any information. In 5 to 10 years, everybody's going to have pretty accurate financial information, but it's how do you utilize that data to actually make decisions that long-term is going to be successful for you.
So getting super practical about this, I work with so many accountants and business owners and contractors. We do websites, marketing, and advertising, SEO and stuff. 2021, you start and you have 350 clients. I work with a lot of accountants. A bunch of them make it. You're part of that group. You do really well. A bunch of them struggle. Why do you have 350 clients and 7 employees after just, it's 2024, August of 2024? What the heck? How did you do that?
Really into, this is a fun story on how kind of the practice blew up. So let's take like a little step back before this, and then we'll kind of roll into that. The firm I worked for, I have only good things to say about them. I learned a ton in the 5 to 10 years in the 5 years that I was there. I tell everybody I got a 10-year education because we worked like dogs. You got to see everything, from startup to billion-dollar plus revenue companies. So loved doing that. But their focus shifted as COVID started. They really wanted to focus on that much larger client, that 50 million plus to billion plus in revenue. And I enjoyed working on those clients. I was on the audit team there. I enjoyed some of that, but my passion was really around small business. That under 20 million in revenue, I would say. And so, I decided to leave because of that, because those are the clients and people that I wanted to help. And so we got into that, and, I didn't, everybody talks about you should really be in a niche, right? And you should really hammer home a niche. And so, I was really thinking about that. I was very active on Facebook. I was in all these different small business groups. I was giving out free advice. I had a little bit of money stacked away, but not a ton. And so it was like, you got to hit the ground running. So I'm in every single group I can imagine, posting content daily, just giving, not being like, hey, come buy my service. Like, here's some things you should just know. Right. And so that started to gain a little bit of traction. And I meet this guy out of South Carolina. His name's Mike Wingard. And he reaches out to me. He's like, hey, I run this pressure washing business in Pennsylvania. Again, I'm in Iowa. He's like, hey, I'd love to come, learn more about what you do. So I'm thinking, sweet. He's got a $500,000 business. This would be a great little bookkeeping client for me. I'm getting all ready for this discovery meeting. And he flips the script on me. He goes, hey, I don't want to use you for accounting, but I run this coaching business. We've got like 12 pressure washing guys that I help coach. Would you be interested in being part of my team? You'll do it for free, but I will be all these clients I'll refer to you. Well, this is like height of the second round of PPP money coming out, and probably, a lot of these guys didn't have their tax returns done yet, and so within a week, I picked up 80% of his group, and for bookkeeping, tax returns, helping them with PPP. And you want to talk about like some instant credibility. Like for us, it takes a little while to gain some of that credibility. Because people are buying from who they know, like, and trust. And I mean, these guys were from California, Ohio, South Carolina. I mean, they're all over the United States. And jump in there and say, hey, we'll put together your PPP documents, get you 25 grand for $500. They think you're the king. And so they start slinging us all over. So if you'd have told me that I'd be a pressure washing CPA, I would have laughed. But that was the niche that really took off and helped start our practice. So we did a ton of bookkeeping, a ton of tax work. For a while there, they were probably till last year, they were probably 40 or 50% of our book of business is pressure washing companies across the United States. We probably had over 150 of them. That niche blew up during COVID because if you got laid off from your job, you had $1,000. Those guys went to Home Depot, bought a pressure washer, and started a little small business and really started making some money, probably even more money than they did working whatever job they were doing. And so we got involved in the groups. The beauty of that niche is not all these guys are big high rollers where they're doing 10 plus million a year. But you get in a group like that, that has 40,000 people on Facebook, 35,000 of them are business owners. So it was every time you'd put a post in that group, boom, instant traction. You get 20, 30 comments. People wanting to meet with you, pick your brain, and you're picking up a third of those as clients. And so it really took off. I got introduced to some of the guys that run events there. Started speaking at some of their conferences and, getting more involved that way. And that's really kind of segued us into really that home services type business. That and construction are really our two niches that we focus on. But I also tell people we focus on small business. because so much of small business, probably under that 25 million in annual revenue, is very, very much the same, regardless of what industry you're in. You really start to see some more industry siloing once you get above some of that revenue targets, where you might see specific software being utilized, specific tax plans and things like that. We're not so interested in being that siloed. And so really, I say our core audience is small business, but if you had to pick a niche in there, it's service and construction. So
That's so great, dude. It's funny. Over time here, I've kind of morphed where I encourage accountants to embrace these 4 prime activities, and you did a bunch of them. So number one, it's always good to have a great website. Make sure you have ads. You've also invested in proactive advertising, search ads with retargeting and stuff. You've created content, but digitally you can take your money and you can create front-end activity that does stuff, right? At minimum, when people hit your website, they're going to see your retargeting. The second thing is, I tell people you got to find a way to make videos to create content. I would also say that you talking in those groups is basically the same type of thing. The idea is you're putting a digital tip or engagement out there so that people can see it. But the internet has so many ways. So you were hustling on that. Number 3, I always tell people you got to professionally call on people or build relations. You got to sell. And so you pursuing that relationship with that pressure washing group, that coaching group, and being open for that and pursuing it and nurturing that relationship, adding value for free, taking out that step. You're not the typical accountant. Like, you're actually quite extroverted. I think, I don't know. I don't want to make some assumptions. I think that's huge. And then the last thing is just spending time with your current clients, investing and adding super value so that they become a referral machine. Those are kind of the 4 things I recommend now. Because you can't just do one thing. But then also, now let's back up. If it's all right, you called me you can tell as much of this story as you want, but you're ready to launch. You have a great job. You got a little bit of cash saved up, you said. Were you guys, did you have a baby yet?
Literally 1 year later, we had our first son, to the day.
Okay. So, but you have good family around. You have a support system. You're not like some isolated type of operation. Walk us through the wins, the struggles. Talk to us about those first 12 months when you left this great job. And again, this is right in COVID, if I remember correctly.
Really good job with, frankly, a lot of opportunity. Part of the exit was, hey, we really saw you as a partner here. And I loved it. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the clients that we worked with. But it really spun down to, I was more passionate about small business. So kind of jumping back to my upbringing, I just kind of realized this. I'm in a B&I group here, and so do a bunch of networking. So you always are given kind of every 6 months you have to give kind of your story and 10-minute kind of here's me. And I was preparing for that, and I didn't realize how many entrepreneurial influences I had in my life growing up, because it was just your life, right? You didn't think much about that. I was always passionate about, if I'm going to go kill something, I want to take it home, right? I love to work for myself. I love to be aggressive and push my own future and my family's future ahead. So the first 12 months were tough because obviously you're not making near as much money. Luckily, my wife is a nurse and making good money, but not insane money. So we'd had some money saved up. I hit the ground running pretty hard and was, pretty quickly was able to build up to about $5,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Now, most of that was going away to pay some bills, but I would say by the end of that first 6 months, to kind of close out 2021, we were probably doing $7,000-$8,000 a month in revenue, somewhere in there.
Now, so now we set up a website, you had some ads going, but you really, I always make this comment to people. It's you either do or do not in this sales realm. I always tell people, what if you found out your dog was going to die, your wife would pass away if you didn't get a sale in the next month? And it's there are people that just make that ignition. You have wood, you make the spark, and you do it. You did that. Specific behaviors. What did you do? I think
I would say getting in that group was huge, right? That was the going from $1,500 in work to $3,000 or $4,000 in monthly.
But where did that come from again? That was like how did you actually make that connection?
It was like a 100,000 person Facebook group. It was like small business, some small business Facebook group, right? I remember the little logo was yellow. That's about all I remember. I haven't been in that group for years. But I was probably posting in there every day and probably spending an hour or two looking at all the new posts and commenting whatever I could. Like just because what else are you gonna do? I had 8 hours. If I was gonna work 8 hours, I had 7 hours of nothing to do. So it's like, all right, I'm sitting in my home office. That was our spare bedroom, where the AC's not getting up there, and I'm sweating. I'm like, I'm gonna sit on the couch for a little bit and just be engaged on Facebook, which sounds weird. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, you should stay off the social media or something to stay productive. I'm like, I'm going to embrace the heck out of this. I remember me and you talking, you're like, dude, we need more videos. And so I'm like setting up the light correctly in our spare bedroom with my laptop recording it, sweating my butt off because the AC ain't running very good up there. And I'm just like, I got to make videos. And, so we'd be like, okay, here's 5 different things we're going to talk about. Make a 3-minute video on each one of these. Okay, well, you start it. Oh, I screwed up the word 30 seconds in. Let's start over, right? And so that's what I was doing when I wasn't doing client work or meeting with different people. And so that first 6 months was just like, how can I get in front of as many people as humanly possible? And some of that was,
That's the sentence. Yeah. That's huge. I don't want to interrupt. How do you get in front of as many people as possible? Because it's a numbers game. Yep. Like people don't understand. It's just a straight funnel. There's a percentage of these people you bump into, so and then you get the opportunities. Keep going. That's awesome.
We were spending a decent chunk of cash on paid ads, and so they were rolling in. We didn't have a nice CRM system or anything like that. It was like I created different folders inside my inbox because I'd get the lead that would come through from our Facebook campaign, and I would call that person immediately when that lead would come in, and then I would move that email between folders for follow-ups and reaching out to them. And then it got to a point where I was like, you'll like this one, Rob. You would see, how sometimes you're on Facebook and you see people with an ad that's way outside of your area, right? It'll be a Pennsylvania company is advertising their lawn care business all across the United States. You happen to stumble on that ad. I would just click into there and message those people and say, hey, heads up, your ad is showing in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm guessing this isn't your service area. By the way, if you'd love to talk accounting sometime, here's my information. I'd love to just pick you guys' brain. And then Facebook starts giving you more of those ads from their algorithm. So it was like, how many people could I message onto their business page to get in front of when I'd see those ads? So I'd literally just scroll 4 posts and go, okay, here's the next ad. Can I go message this business and try to get at least a little bit of contact from them, or even just a shell to get on a call with them?
That's so good. So again, I think these 4 things: you get ads turned on, you make videos, make content, and then you got to proactively engage and get in front of as many people as you possibly can. One thing that people can do is you can pull lists of businesses using a tool called Outscraper. You scrape Google Business, or even just go like Google lawn care businesses and go to every location, and then do Loom videos. And all you do is just hey, I don't know if I'd love an opportunity to connect. I do accounting and bookkeeping. I'd love to talk about your business sometime. And you have their website open, and you send it to them. Like, do something. And this is what I learned from the insurance world. And you learn this from multi-level marketing organizations too. But most of them say create they call it their Project 300. Everybody you've ever thought of, you put in a list, and then you confront them with the opportunity to connect with you until they say no. And now I think that as an accountant, what I've learned, I'm not an accountant, to be clear here, but what you and the folks that I see succeed the most, you don't just rely on a marketing plan. I'm a marketer, but really it's about sales. And so your website, your videos, all those ads, that's one part of it. But I mean, that activity to get in front of as many people as you can, those are little seeds. And then what's funny is it's just a flywheel effect that Jim Collins talks about. It's these little things over time. And if you persist in them, persistence, like Ray Kroc from McDonald's, persistence is the king. It does it. So, okay, so you're doing that. Talk to me about the first clients you got. How did you present your stuff?
Man,
You're doing this advisory thing. What did you learn through it? What
yeah.
were the wins? What were the fails? Talk to me a
So
little bit
the first
more
few
about that.
clients, again, mostly pressure washing. One of my first clients I still have to this day ran a marketing company. I connected with him. I say if I could have 1,000 of him, I would be set, right? He's like the perfect client, shows up to every meeting, is hungry, has lots of different things going on. Ran this marketing company out of Washington State, but he lived in Vegas for tax reasons. And I found him again on another one of these Facebook pages. He was starting to get his feet into real estate and said, I want to build these luxury treehouse stays in Washington. I want to buy these 40 acres and I want to put 3 different tree houses up and rent them on Airbnb. And so I'm putting together a business plan. Would anybody be interested in looking at it to critique it? And so he sent it over. I connected with him. He sent it over to me, and I just tore the thing apart. Like, he's got the marketing brain. He's talking about how beautiful everything's going to be, and he knows who their niche is and what their client looks like. It's a 28-year-old that drinks way too much Starbucks coffee and wants to post all over Instagram. And I'm like, that's great. That is, you know who you're going to, but the bank doesn't care. They want to know, what does rent look like? How much is this going to cost? Who's your contractor going to be? What's the timing? How fast can you build up this to be a sustainable operation? And so we tore that apart. I mean, it was like a 30-page proposal that he had. Oh yeah, for free.
For free? Are you saying okay, so I just want
Yeah.
that is huge. I know both businesses I started, Frederickson Masonry, there's a couple of guys that basically we went to them and we said, look, this is what we're going to do. Can we help you for cheap or free? And we just add value. Like, I saw the problem. I leaned into it. I asked if I could solve it. So there you are. This guy presents this opportunity to go in and add value. And instead of you being all worried about, oh, it needs to be a high retainer client, it's like, no, go in and like make omelets out of these broken eggs and do something.
They can't ever get the funding for it. But after we, have a quick conversation about kind of my notes on it, he goes, well, I also run this marketing company. We do about $750,000 a year in business. I make about $250,000 a year in profit. We need a bookkeeper because I can't handle doing all this and continuing to grow this practice. So that turns into monthly consulting, bookkeeping, tax work. And then as his empire grows, then he gets into real estate, ends up selling his marketing practice to really go triple down into real estate, and now has 5 or 6 different entities that he's involved in, all in the short-term Airbnb space. And so that was just one of the kind of examples of one of our first clients. We still have him. He's a good buddy of mine. He's one of the few clients I give my cell phone number to, kind of a deal, where I can text him and, he's the one congratulating you when you have your second kid, as opposed to asking questions. Like, there's a true friendship more than just a professional relationship. But, those first few were, you give them the world, right? And because you're looking for, one, you want to just do a good job and figure out what you're doing, but 2, you're looking for those referrals. And so a lot of those first clients turned into referrals where they go, our second biggest state that we have work in is Ohio. Why Ohio? Because we had started with probably 3 clients there that were in that coaching group, and they told everybody about us. And so I think 50% of our revenue is out of Iowa. And we looked at it the other day. I think 18% is out of Ohio. Is the next.
And what would you attribute to the things that you did that caused them to, value you so deeply that they would refer you? Like, real tangible. Like, what are some things that you did, or what did they perceive from you?
I tell every client or prospect when they come in the door, we pick up clients in 2 ways. They start a new business, or they are pissed off at their current accountant. I'm not stealing people away from a happy accounting relationship. It just doesn't work. We are second worst in switching from a bank. Banks are the worst to switch. Accounting practices, if you've got payroll and bookkeeping and all that other advisory, tax prep, all of that, boy, that is a tough cookie to switch. And when somebody wants to switch, they are going to make that move. And so I tell people that all the time. You can it's such a low bar, in my opinion, just to have like a day turnaround in email communication or to follow up on a voicemail, right? Like, that is not difficult to do, and it'll retain you clients for eternity. And most people can't do that.
That's huge. So just proactive. Now, how many? I want to
Yeah.
go there. I have some notes here. There was something that you said earlier about this. So you got you got some clients. So if I hear you, you got in
Yep.
proximity to this niche. It's not really about the niche, but
Yep.
you found business owners, and there was a
Yep.
community. You added value. Another thing, you were getting in front of as many people as you possibly can. Another thing
Yep.
was you invested in your digital marketing, your ads, your website with us, and all that. You created video. You were doing lots, hitting the pavement. I want to back
Okay.
up to before you launched. You said two things that were huge. One, that you got like 10 years worth of education
Yep.
by working in this firm. And then two, that whatever you were doing inside of this firm had positioned you a place where they were,
Right.
hey, you might be a partner someday. We want you to be a partner. Will you tell me, because I think that one of the best things people can do to prepare themselves for entrepreneurship
Right.
is get a job in the
Yeah.
industry and work. But help me understand real practically, what do you think your partners saw in you? What were you doing?
Yeah.
Spend more
So,
time in that. I just want to
When
hear
I started,
what that was like.
I started in 2016 there. So it was my first job out of college. We moved down to Des Moines for that job opportunity. The firm I worked for was probably a 300-person firm, and it was mostly Minnesota and Iowa. They just merged, so I actually got an offer letter from the previous firm. They moved in that year that I had an offer letter to my start date. They merged with a Minnesota firm, so they went from 150 kind of at each firm to 300. And then probably by the time I left, they had about 600 people, just to give a little context on the size. The office I was in was about 22 people in Des Moines. They just brought on kind of this young gun partner. He was a manager when I initially had my interviews, was a partner the day I started. He wanted to go out on his own, worked for another firm in Des Moines, but really cut his teeth and was kind of a valuable guy. Ended up coming into the practice I worked at, and he was the one that brought me on. And really, so when we started there, you did everything. We did bookkeeping, we did payroll, we did tax prep, we did, audits and that sort of thing. And then by about year two, you kind of had to pick what your route was going to be. So are you going to be more heavily tax focused? Are you going to be more audit focused? Well, our audit team was fairly small. I think there was like 3 or 4 of us. So there was the partner, there was a manager, a supervisor, and a staff. That was about it. So you went out on all the jobs together. The partner stayed back. But, we probably had 5 or 10 jobs throughout the entire year. And the rest of the year, that partner really was focused on the advisory piece. And so when you worked under him, you got put on those advisory projects. So there was a home builder in town who was working out a deal with a city a couple just outside of Des Moines. They were looking at tax incentives on building these lots, and so we put together a 30-year pro forma on basically them creating this separate business to build houses in this community, and it would turn into an annuity long term for them. And so, like, working on projects like that, getting really involved, and then I started networking. Within my first year, I was joining the young professionals groups. I was bringing in clients. I still have my first client. He's a realtor. He sold me my building that we're in. He sold our house this past year, helped us buy our new one. Like, I've had him. He was my first ever client. He's stuck with us. And so I kind of had a little bit of that going in, but that was the mentality that I learned from the bosses ahead of me, is they were cutthroat. I mean, in a good way. They were just stone cold killers. They were amazing at their craft, and they gave us all the opportunity to work on it with them. And then when you made mistakes, they sat you down and said, okay, this is what you got to think about here. They made you think about business, not accounting. Wasn't it wasn't like, how do you do the
that's
debits
good.
and credits correctly? It was, how do you think like this business owner, because they don't care about the debits and credits. They want to know what's the big picture in all of this. And so now the other side of that too is we work 2,800 hours a year. So you were contracted for 2,200 hours a year was what your contract was. But I mean, my team put in 27 to 2,900 hours a year in time for the company.
I want to insert here. I'm sorry. So first, I mean, you just said basically you are delivering above expectation to your employer. You're not sitting there going, I want more money. I want more money. You're out there saying, yep, I'm here. I'm a dog. I'm going to eat at this. I'm going to work at this. I'm going to learn this business. That's a huge thing you just brought up. You also, I think it's interesting that you said that you've got with the partners on the advisory thing. I talk to so many accountants that are like, I want to get into advisory. And then what's funny is I ask them specifically, well, tell me what that means. Then it's like, well, it's what they want. I want a more proactive communication. I want a bigger retainer. I want it to be a relationship. But I'm like, but what are you doing to add value to the business? And so doing a 30-year promo, you actually got to get in there and create a real business advantage. How do you actually move the needle to help a business? And do you think you had that capability before you got that job? Like, did you have specific, like, here's 5 ways I'm going to actually transform a business, or did you learn that in the business?
I think I could. A lot of it to me seems like common knowledge, right? Like, it doesn't seem this like what it's like basic math, right? To some of this, right? I'm good at Excel, so I can kick some of this stuff out fairly easily. And if you can kind of parlay that on top of understanding how P&L and balance sheets kind of fit together, you can do some of this stuff fairly well with a good understanding of accounting. You don't need to be an expert by any means, but I would say what always would blow me away is I really remember probably a year or two before I left, I got this general contractor, and I would meet with him. First meeting would be, that second week of the month, we'd go over the numbers together. The second meeting would be, how the heck are you doing? What's going on in your world? What can we help with? What are long-term things we need to be thinking about? And so I joke that it was kind of a therapy session, but I remember the partner, this was kind of his like, let's put you to the test, see what you got kind of a deal. And I remember he would come into some of those meetings and I'd be like, yeah, I'm killing this thing. Like, I've given this guy a ton of information, and, he's really happy with what we're talking about and where the direction of his company's going. And the partner would sit down for 5 minutes and both of our jaws would be on the table, because he just spews so much knowledge about the industry, about what's going on. He'd ask 2 questions and they'd be blown away. He's like, I've never even thought about that. I didn't know we could do something like this. And so it was just getting those opportunities to learn from somebody who was an absolute expert at their trade is what set us apart, without a doubt. That's I learned everything from that partner. He was a genius, and he wasn't like a jerk about anything. He was a down-to-earth guy. He would sit you down. And so I learned the business and how to help clients, but I also learned how do you manage people and effectively treat a team, which is hugely important if you want to grow.
Man, everything you're bringing up here, 100%. There are so many facets to business. You just segued into being a good leader and inviting you to do it. So not only was he this savant that could lead a therapy session in a way, ask 3 questions and transform the way this guy's thinking. That's one thing, to have that ability. But the second thing, to do it and lead other people, to invite into that. Real quick, just getting a little specific. I think that's huge. Therapy sessions where you're saying how you do and where you at. Here's what we see. What's your response? And digging to understand how you can add value, rather than a lot of accountants, they're like, well, I'll give you reports, I'll give you dashboards, I'll give you a monthly P&L. It's like, that's not what it is. It's about business, not debits and credits. Are there some things, now you probably got to think about this for a second, but when you think of specific value adds that those sessions had with that guy, what are some different areas that he was pulling together to really pop combustion of value, where it's like, ooh, that was a nice little spark.
So he would be a guy that would not be in every meeting, but he'd know what the heck went on in every meeting, right? And so he would review notes, and he'd come in not just, oh, I'm just gonna, prepare for a curveball and sit on a fastball, right? He was ready to go, but he was an industry expert. He knew construction accounting and the construction business probably better than a lot of the contractors that were clients. He could go start a $10 million construction business tomorrow. It would take nothing for him to go run that, and him never lift a hammer or whatever, and be incredibly successful in that. So that was a big piece, is he just lived and breathed it. That his core industry. He was the president of their different, associations. I mean, he lived and breathed that world. Um, and so one, I think there's a passion behind it, right? If you're not passionate about something like that, like, yeah, you can give some advice, but you got to be passionate about what you're talking about, because that invokes you to dive a little deeper into that subject, to probably push a little bit harder around, the things that are important and the things that other people should know. But he also had a gigantic book of business and saw it 1,000 times before, right? So like there wasn't surprises, and I feel that way a little bit too now. That's the beauty of our consulting meetings that we do is, and this is why I say, we don't really have a perfect niche per se. I say our niche is small business, because if you're a landscaper, if you're a massage therapist, if you are a marketing company, you're probably all going through the same problems at $1 million to $10 million in revenue. It's probably a hiring issue. It's probably a marketing issue. It's probably a not understanding tax code or even your numbers issue. And it's probably how do we retain top talent? Like, and if you can get the answers to some of those questions, the accounting's just the baseline of it, right? It gives you some of that basic information, but walking those examples over and over and over again, you'd be amazed at how many people come in and they have been in business for 5 years, they've never really had anything together, and they're just like ashamed. And like one little thing to even tell them would be like, hey, like this is the reality of most of our conversations with other clients. Like you're not alone. My biggest thing I'll tell people is like, we live in an Instagram world where everybody thinks everybody's just killing it when they're a small business owner. They're making millions of dollars, and they probably are posting about that online. Reality is most people are struggling. Yeah.
I know. That's one thing I learned. My little bit in the financial world is always like, well, how much did you make? No, not gross. What did you make?
Yeah.
Oh, and then what did you spend? Like it's this total different thing. I got to back real quick. So what did the partners, if you were to take a step back and say, what did the partners see in you and watch in you that they went, aha?
Yeah,
I think I know some things
like
that you're doing that most don't.
You get to the top two ways. You can talk to people, or you're a super nerd. And there's not a lot in between. So one, I can talk to people fairly well. I enjoy that. That's something I'm good at. Two, you got to be a workhorse. It's a competitive field. I had a coworker who, her and her husband were perfectly healthy human beings and got IVF so that she didn't have a baby during tax season. Like that's the level of competitiveness that was going on there. And so if you could compete, you moved up and you got opportunities. You have to be a grinder. And that's part of the reason I left too is, you work insane hours. And so there's a commitment to what you're doing that I think helped kind of elevate me while I was there. And then I would just say, having some of those life experiences have not been a disservice for me, right? Because I can talk the talk a little bit more than, somebody that hasn't gone through some of those different things. I remember telling that partner who's kind of who brought me up, that I filed a Schedule C for my, phone fixing business while I was in college. He thought that was awesome, right? It's like, I didn't think much about it at the time, but yeah, that was a tax situation that I had to go through, So I think it was, some of those sorts of things. I don't know how you like really prepare yourself for that. Part of it is like everybody has a cool, different life experience. And so pour into that, whether it's good or bad, use that as kind of a tool to help kind of shape where you're wanting to go. And don't shy away from it. You can embrace some of that. So I've embraced it. So
Is it fair to say that while you were there, you were working really hard to get awesome at engaging with people, seeing how all of this comes together for the business case? Also, you went to school for accounting. Sure. You are sharpening your, would you say that you're just on a mission for that, huh?
Looking at it now, I can kind of see, that, you can see in the past easier. That wasn't my mind. Like, it was like, how do I get to the top as fast as I possibly can? I was the only one in
Ambition.
our office that started that year. So I was the only fresh meat, but there were three guys ahead of me that started the year before. We all got promoted at the same time for that first promotion. Like it was like, okay, you come in day one. I am going to try to be equal with you, and you've got a whole tax season ahead of me, which is substantial in your first 2 years of being an accountant. You learn a ton in that first year, and I'm like, I'm going to be just as good as they are in the next 3 months. And so that was kind of some of my passion. Some of it is like was money driven, I would say at the time right away, where it's like, hey, I want to go make partner. They make great money. I would say it's less that today. It was some more of those like I don't know, kind of worldly goals. And then you start to climb and you go, okay, that's really not actually that important. But then part of that, I mean,
Mhm.
so that's maybe not your best driving motives, but because of some of those motives, you get some of the good out of it as well as you kind of shift and grow. So because you want to elevate to the peers that are a year older than you, you better get after it, right? You better soak up and learn as much as you possibly can. And if you want to make partner, you better also, after you work the 12-hour day, go to that young professionals networking event at 7:30 at night and stay there till 9:30 and be in the office again at 6:30 the next day. Like that was the kind of regiment that I went through. Do I do that anymore today? Heck no. We don't even work on Fridays in the summer. And the reason for that is I want to make sure we can retain people. But at the time, it was like, well, this is how you sharpen and hone your skills. And I was passionate about it. Like passion was the driver behind it. It was like, how do I move my way up? And then you start to fall in love with it. Like I would never leave accounting because I just am in love with the the ideas and the connections that I can make with other business owners. I love talking business. It's my favorite thing to do in the world. And one of my jokes whenever I have a discovery meeting is I always send a follow-up email after that. And I always tell them in that, it's a cookie cutter kind of email response, but it always says, and it's true, that I have the best job in the world because I get to talk business with people all day. And my wife loves it too because I don't come home and talk to her about it. So I can get it out of my system, in 8 or 10 hours in the office.
I think the comment you made that it's about business, it's not about accounting, is probably something that I would affirm and I see and I try to convey. Now, I think what's difficult for accountants that might be listening to this, I do think you have a series of gifts that they're strengths
Yeah.
and gifts that you've poured into and advanced. You went to college, you have an inkling for
Yeah.
finances. You said you're a spreadsheet master of Excel and all these things. But there are some things that I've noticed in you. I think that you're really great at asking really good questions, carrying conversations, asking questions to dive
Hmm.
into things and then synthesize things. You're easy to communicate with. You move quickly. You are in tune to how
Right.
people are perceiving you. I think.
Yeah,
I think you
yeah.
have
No,
really
I
high
think
EQ.
I
I
can
don't want to
follow
make
that.
don't make you blush
It
here.
doesn't hurt to hear. So,
And the other thing that I think is really great, that whole idea that you love talking business, because it's almost like fishing. And this has been something I've been thinking a lot about lately, is that fishing, if you love fishing, and I kind of love fishing, but it's kind of like business, right? You can buy all the gear, have the website,
yep,
have the stuff, have all the competency,
yep,
but you got to go out in the water
exactly.
and catch a fish. And that spark, that bringing together the wood, the dry wood, the flame, or the spark, and making the fire, or whatever other analogy you want to do, there is this thing where I don't think people fully grasp
Right.
how hopeful you have to be, how passionate, how persistent you have to be in getting in front of as
Yep.
many people as you can with that, so that all the other smart competencies to add value and do the books and do the tax, like it
Exactly.
doesn't matter how good of an accountant you are unless you can go out and like kill
Exactly. Well,
animals and bring them in for butcher.
yeah, the
Like you
butchering
just
is the
don't get to
accounting
do
part.
it.
You got to
And
kill
so
it first.
yes. Yes, and it's funny. I always make the joke. I'm like, I've been living off of
Yep.
what I kill for almost 12 years now. And when I meet people, my dad was
Yeah.
a sales manager at Ziegler, and now I got to be careful how I share this, but though he was the sales manager, so he's leading guys that are selling,
Hmm.
$80,000 to $400,000 machineries to counties, to big contractors, to small contractors. Like, look at this. I got kids bringing me coffee. And one of the
Right.
things that everybody wanted to be a salesperson because you're a guide,
Yep.
you make big commission, you make money. And we always laugh where there is this thing where I think you can train people to sell, but there are some natural
Yep.
things inside of you that if you don't have those strengths, you don't
Right.
have that hope. It's almost like a hope with
For sure.
you're okay with hearing no, with you're persistent enough to get after it. Like I know actually a lot of
100%.
stupid people that make a lot of money in sales
Yep.
and business because they're just good at doing that. But I really do think I see that in you. And it's really hard. You know, what encouragement would you have for people?
Yeah.
Because as I listen to you, and if I was like so
Yep.
many of the folks that I visit with, they don't have what you have. And I know the guys that take our digital plans and our
Yep.
approach and stuff and just kind of head in that direction, the ones that I know that are the most successful, they have this
for sure.
it thing, I think. What encouragement would you have for somebody that maybe doesn't
Yep.
have that and needs to nurture it? Somebody who like, just
I
what
run into this all
what
the time with
perspective do
our
you
clients,
have there as
right?
I
Like,
say all
especially
that?
if I have a smaller client that's kind of getting going. I got one that just comes to mind. I met with them this week, and they run a plumbing business. They'll come in and put that new blue, like if you got a broken pipe, they'll do relining stuff.
Relining? Yeah,
And
relining.
they do fantastic work. He's an expert at it. They do an amazing job. He sucks at talking to people, and he doesn't ever work on trying to talk to people. You know, he doesn't go to anything. He relies on Facebook groups and trying to be the first person to comment when it pops up that somebody needs some plumbing work so that they can go out there. They don't do any outbound marketing, nothing. And I told him, I'm like, look, man, you need to go break this down and get in front of people. You're good at what you do and you can make money doing that and you'll be fine. But with your aspirations and goals, you cannot just be the worker forever. You have to build a team. With the money that you're wanting to make and your long-term goals, you have to build a team. So like one thing I always recommend is like a BNI or a, something like that to get in front of people and to have some of that. I'm pretty extroverted, but when I'm tired, I hate going to events. I hate it. It's not actually being there, it's the thought of having to go. Once I go, I'm always pumped. I'm always like, this is awesome, so glad I did it. But it's like I gotta force myself to go to them sometimes and really have that like internal monologue fight with myself. But I typically win that fight and go, and then I'm always really, really happy that I went. And so you gotta fight yourself to actually go, especially when you're the owner. Like the buck stops with you. Like if you decide you don't want to do something, there's nobody else telling you that you don't have to do it, And so I struggle. There's a discipline piece to that isn't something that you can just flip a switch. It's like you got to really work on that. And, if you're trying to get better at anything, you got to just do it some more. And so if you're struggling going and talking to people or kind of putting yourself out there a little bit more, then go start putting yourself out there a little bit more. Like it sounds counterintuitive, but it's the reality. Go start meeting with people. Go start building relationships. And it's awkward and you're not going to be good at it, but you probably weren't very good at accounting when you started either. And you got better at it and you learned it and that sort of thing.
Notice the language. I think the language that you're using is go and meet people and go build relationships.
Yeah.
That's right. And my 4 prime things that I talk about. Yes, ads. Video. When you invest in video, you're kind of building a relationship in a way. When you go out and call, when I say call with people, it's like, don't go call, go to the BNI group. And so one of the books that I read that was pivotal, everybody that runs a podcast is like, I'm the best at this. Let me tell you what I always do. So at the risk of sounding like I've got this dialed up, but if you were to ask anybody that knows me in my life, and if you were to look at how things are, God gave me a strength for this. I honed it. I sold, I worked at Best Buy. I probably sold for 6 years. I bet I've sold 15,000 interactions at a Best Buy. I served tables. I bet I served, 6,000 different people in that. And then I've got, 15 years of business experience after this. And I even worked at a church. I'm a Jesus follower type of thing. But so I want to give encouragement of how to do those 2 things you just said. So when we say front end activity, where you got to get yourself out and yes, there's the Facebook thing, but you differentiated messaging in Facebook groups versus meeting people and building relationships. there was a book I read called, there's two of them. One of them is by John Maxwell, called Everybody Communicates, Few Connect. Everybody communicates, few connect. And the idea that he teaches is the most subtle thing. Go get in front of people, ask them questions about themselves till you find something you have in common, and then give it some attention. And just go learn some. But if you're not willing to be like I will literally be in a group. You ask my wife. I'll be in a group of anybody, and I can come out with four best friends so quickly. And it's not manipulative. I am so in that book, it also talks about you have to nurture, you have to have some self-love. And I think that comes actually from knowing that you're made in the image of God. And so that you're on a firm footing that understands that like you have a purpose in life. You're going to I have a lot to that. But once you do that, you nurture a true love for others and a genuine curiosity. You have to, like when I go watch people, like it's silly. I see little families all the time. We go to Valley Fair, the little amusement park, and I'm corny. I'll just sit there and smile because I see these moms chasing after their little kids and the dad behind, and I just like, I wonder what he does for a living. I wonder how he got there. I wonder what the kid's like. I wonder what the mom does. Like, I am just driven by curiosity. Now, as I get older and a little more cynical, sometimes it's harder, but if you nurture a genuine curiosity about people, and then you're hopeful enough to go out and bridge the gap, because the second book is by a pastor named Bill Hybels, and oh my gosh, I gotta remember what it's called. It's called Just Walk Across the Room. So he takes it to, spreading the gospel, but this idea that here we are in our suburbs or even in our cities, and we're isolated, we got headphones on, we're all on our screens, what it takes to just walk across the room and say, you been here before? I mean, I will stumble into the dumbest first questions.
And that's something you can practice.
So you come to, you live close to
I've
here?
even told people, go into ChatGPT and put some prompts in there for this event that you're going to go to and have some open line questions that you can start with. One of the coolest ones I love, I got this business card. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's one of those where you tap it to a phone. Terrible business card. The worst one you can buy. It's the best icebreaker in the world because almost nobody has them. And so if I'm in a setting, I carry actual business cards and I carry this stupid, it looks like a room key to a hotel. But that's the first thing I pull out. If I'm in a group of people and there's not great conversation or people are kind of starting to pass the business card around, I'll go and tap it to everybody's phone and I'll go, you'll never remember who I am because you're going to save me as a contact and you won't know my name and I'll be dead in your sea of contacts. So here's my actual business card, but it breaks that first ice. Like it's like something to like commonly talk about. And so I always keep it with me. It's worthless from an advertising perspective. I've never gotten anybody to call me off of it, but it is the best icebreaker when you're meeting somebody. Yep.
To meet people and build relationships. So hearing you say that, every accountant out there that's listening to this, what accountant is A, in a hotel of a business meeting thing, B, extroverted enough to say, hey, I need to get these numbers, let me meet them and build a relationship, to C, have this relationship breaker, and then let's take one more step back. You're teaching your clients how you're adding value. So just like when your partner was in there and would ask a couple of questions or add value, folks, you're teaching your business clients not about debits and credits, but about how they can spark more sales because it's about business, not about debits and credits. Yeah. Like that is, and that's why the thing I don't ever want to do though is discourage people who aren't gifted like this. You said you can practice.
I don't ever let anybody talk to clients if we haven't gone through practice together. Especially anybody that works for us, if they're going to go do discovery meetings, we've done that 10 times where I play the client that hops in because I don't want you to just absolutely flop the first time you meet somebody. I want you to know get ready for some curveballs because I'm going to sprinkle them in over these 10 practice sessions. And they don't got to be, like when we do a discovery meeting, it's 30 minutes. We don't do these for 30 minutes, but we'll kind of do rapid fire and I'll come in as a pressure washer. I'll come in as a therapist or whatever it is, and we'll role play this out. Here's the thing. This stuff is really, really easy to talk about. It is exceptionally difficult to do. So here's my book recommendation for you. I am a
Yes.
big EOS guy. I joke about it, a little tongue in cheek, but it was the Bible at the firm that I worked for. Like everybody did a VTO. The
Really?
firm did one, the office did one, the siloed business did one, and then you did one at the individual level. Like it was that serious.
And this
Yep.
is EOS Traction by Gino Wickman, and then they
Yep.
have like some
Yep.
sales traction. They got a couple other books,
Couldn't
but
recommend it more.
EOS
That
Traction
book
by
and
Gino
Profit First
Wickman.
are the two that I recommend to every single person that I talk to. What I
Mm.
love about EOS Traction is the VTO. I think it's the best thing because everybody wants to talk about setting goals and that sort of. So there's a point to this. I'm circling back, but what
Oh,
I
I love
what I
it.
like about it is it's forcing you to think a little bit long term. And so if you're listening to this going, yeah, that's just not me. I could never do that. You're in the slug of it right now. And there might not be the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's really easy to just go, I can't do that. It's not me. And what I love about that VTO, I almost make all of our clients do it. So, because I want to know long term where they want to go. But I also want to know, like, hey, I get that you might be in a tough spot right now. Like, that's just reality. Let's give you some of that light at the end of the tunnel because that's what forces you to change a habit. So, like, if you're sitting here listening and going, I suck at talking to people, then go read that book first, put together a VTO, and part of your VTO should say that you suck at meeting people and talking to them. And so, one of your goals for that quarter, for that year, is to role play with a friend or a spouse or a business colleague and walk through some of these awkward scenarios to just get better at it. And then another one can be, I got to go to 5 networking meetings. That's my goal. And so it's not very fun to do, but it's easy then. Now you've got kind of a system that can help you kind of formulate some of that. And we're a lot of system type A people. It's like, hey, we've got notes. Let's just go follow and go do what our notes say. And so there's a behavior shift that's in that.
That's so good.
But it also gives you that light at the end of the tunnel to go, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable today, but I'm doing it for a long-term purpose.
That's so good. Now I want to soothe. So I think I love being around guys like you. There's so much more system. I'm like an animal in terms of like this instinct thing. Then I have to manage this weakness because I don't have this in. But, some of the things that when you're in that environment, so let's just say you do that, you practice. I genuinely, folks, if you're just driven by asking simple,
Right.
authentic questions of people and be ready to hear it, the book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, just the idea of start in a simple set of questions, literally the
Right.
logistics. So have you been here before? Yeah. Oh, cool. When did you come? What was that like? Now, what do you do for a living? You got to get good at that. And then ask more follow-up. So I always think that if you come in with a curiosity about people
Right.
and you're not there to get them, notice what happens is you go from having to put yourself out there. That's not what you're doing. You're not promoting yourself. In fact, collect business cards instead of give business cards. You're using yours for an icebreaker, but if you go into these environments and you have somebody right there, even if it's a low-level employee that's not a business owner and a perfect thing, I would go in there and find everything about them, where'd they go to school. I even ask, so you go from simple logistics to something about business, because that's usually what people are willing to talk about. What'd you do for a living? Oh, cool. How'd you do that? What are the big problems that you have with that? What's your company like? What's your owner like? What's your team like? Like you just pour on and just bloop, 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 like you pinch and zoom into their life. I always think it's kind of like entering a house and they have all these different rooms that are doored off. You owe it to, if you get good at just going up and shaking the handle to find out if that's open with a question, you'll get really good at this. And part of so as soon as you find a little bit of common ground, without manipulating them, without trying to systematize this and do this to people, you authentically share a little bit. And it's always like 80-20, 80% them talking to 20% you sharing how, oh, cool. Yeah, I had a dog once. It was nothing like that. I'll see people's dog and I'm like, that's a fine specimen you have there. You should see my Frenchie. Now, what I just did there was acknowledge their dog, share that I have a dog. They'll be like, ha ha ha, yeah. And if any, it's so weird how little turns of questions and common ground And then what you do is it's
Totally.
never about you. It's always about them. You are in
Yep.
service to
Yep.
them at everything. Now,
Yeah.
I don't want to blab too much, but I always think there's two things that you should be doing when you
Mm-hmm.
are in proximity with people. First off, I think you should try to honor and love and move them
Yep.
forward, serve them, make it about them.
Right.
You don't have to be heard. People feel so valued when you do that and you build connection and you actually hear them. I mean, even
Yeah.
right now, you listening to me, like this is like I'm withdrawing from the equity bucket as I talk, right? But when I get you sharing what's important to you or whatever, now some people don't want to, and that's fine. But I would share that I think most people deep down want somebody to take notice of them, hear them, and even you think about, again, you're at a networking event,
Yep.
you go to the Chamber of Commerce, and it's like 4 employees that have been, told to go to the Chamber of Commerce, and you're like, why am I talking to these people? No, get to know them because that's how you get referred up. That's how you get something there. And or at minimum, you get these relationships and friendships of people that can get in there. But all I want to do is just share that there's more. It's a simpler
Yep.
behavior. It's not about being extroverted. Now, it's hard. I gain energy,
100%.
and it sounds like you gain energy.
Yes.
Like I'm getting more passionate as I do this by asking those questions and building those connections. And then, but the two things I'm always doing is I'm trying to move the ball down the field professionally in a non-manipulative way, in a guide-based way. Oh, cool. They're giving me
Right.
gold where they're stuck at, where are they going? Someday I might
Yeah.
get an opportunity to show them the there. Someday. But I'm always doing those two things. I'm moving the ball down the field professionally, but really what I'm doing is I'm trying to build connection.
Yep.
I'm trying to build a relationship in a like I'm okay. I got enough people that I can't possibly get close enough. I
Yep.
can't even
Couldn't
remember the
agree
names.
more.
I'm thousands and thousands of people a month.
So
But I don't know
one
what
of the
thoughts
things
come
my
up as I
brother
share
told
that.
me- my brother lives down in Phoenix. He's just less than 2 years younger than me, so I'm the oldest. It's always resonated with me once he said this. So, kind of coming back to the ice fish or the fishing earlier, I'm passionate about ice fishing. I love it, and I am totally in the wrong profession to love ice fishing because our busiest time of the year is the best ice fishing time. But he doesn't really care. Like he doesn't think about it. He would never go on his own. But he goes, I get passionate about it because you're so passionate about it, because you love it. And then my brother is a professional disc golf player. So like he moved down to Phoenix so he could play all year, while he teaches PE. So we couldn't be like further separate. But he's so passionate about it that when I go play with him, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of fun. I never play on my own. It's not my thing at all, but I'll go play every single time I'm down there with him because he's so passionate about it. He loves what he's doing. And if you can find some of those things that other people are passionate about, you want to talk about a perfect way to have a great conversation. And it's actually interesting. Like, be there and be willing to learn. And so that's kind of where I'm connecting here is like, if you can get to a few points, like you always start with a little bit of that small talk and you dives a little bit deeper as people get to know you and a little bit more comfortable, but find something that kind of makes their eyes light up, makes for just really fun, engaging conversation. But you cannot go in there with the thought of like, I'm going to go pick up 6 of these people as prospects. Like that never, ever works. Desperation you can smell a mile away. It's got to be real, genuine, like, I'm here to connect with people. I'm here to have actual connection. One of our core values is generosity, and it's giving without the expectation of ever receiving anything. And I hate this because it can turn into that prosperity gospel, and I don't want it to ever be that. But it really seems to be that way if you're actually genuine about it, right? And so I don't say that to be like, force this internally inside of yourselves and give away a bunch of stuff for free because it'll come back tenfold. I'm not that late night preacher, right? But the reality is having that genuine curiosity and openness and willing to give really is a benefit that I don't think you can like practically calculate what it does for you. And I don't think that even should be the intention, but it sure seems to do well for people when they have that attitude.
Now I'm sensing. So I think we've just drifted into
sure.
what
100%.
a faith thing here. If you're willing to talk about it a little bit,
Yep.
I'm a sinner. I follow Jesus. My faith and trust is placed in Jesus alone and his sacrifice on the cross to pay my debt, right? And it's through faith alone, in Jesus alone, that I am saved. Now, that might pop some people's brains, right? And now I'm whatever. But it's interesting that, like, talk to me, is there a realm of faith that fuels that? Because I actually think when I have a sheet here, and I was writing, what I see in you are what I think, and I'll share with you what they are, but they have to do with fruits. But go ahead and share with me, what does your faith mean to your
100%.
business, or are you fueled by that? What faith do you have? And
I've never had to share like personal testimony because I just grew up in a religious family, went to Christian school from kindergarten through college. Like, it never really thought about it. I don't know if anybody knows much about Iowa, but Northwest Iowa is one of the most conservative places probably in the country. And so you don't mow your lawn on Sundays. You don't go out. Like, the restaurants were closed. Like, you couldn't even go out to eat on Sundays. It just didn't exist, right? And you never thought about it much until I moved away. And I realized, like, oh, this is so substantially different than what I grew up around, which was really good for me because it made me start to dive a little deeper in why I believe what I believe. And I went through a rough patch when we started this practice. Like, there was a point in time that was like, this is not fun. And like, there were nights, not getting a lot of sleep and that sort of thing. And I really centered it back to my faith in God, and really helped get me through some of those tough times. You'll laugh at this, but I pray before I send out any proposal. Like, as I'm working on it.
I don't laugh. I don't laugh. I don't laugh at all. I pray that we gain. Keep going.
This is an opportunity. I pray that we can be a blessing for them. I pray that we can actually get the business. And like, so I want to take it very seriously. But my number two, went to college with me, is a great Christian man. And that is exceptionally important in what we do when we run our business. We build it around those core values of our faith. And frankly, it's why I left, is I saw what the rat race in accounting turns into. Like, all the partners were divorced at the top because they worked themselves to death and spent no time with their families. They're starting to come out with phrases, that everybody thought was hilarious. Like curse words about the city we live in on t-shirts, and we were handing them out to everybody. And I went, really? Like, you're okay putting this on here and being and to most people, it's not that big of a deal. To me, it's like, I just can't be a part of this. Like, I can't accept what you're trying to do here. And that's okay. Like, you're allowed to make those decisions and say, this isn't part of my core values. And so, like, there's a joke. I love being an entrepreneur and I love all that, but I really love my wife and I love my family, and I don't want to throw that away for cash and a career, right? And so that's why we started the practice.
You know what? That's it right there. Okay. When I was earlier in this podcast saying, what do I think I see in you? Some words that popped up. I think that what I see in you are genuinely what the Bible and what Paul taught as the fruits of the Spirit,
Right.
which are the outcomes in your life if you choose to put to death your sinful nature, if you choose to put on the things that Christ showed us, which is obviously, love your neighbor as yourself, all these different things, seek justice, mercy, and love. But those fruits are, if you think about this, I think that one of the keys to being a great salesperson, that genuine curiosity, when you are wrapped in love, joy.
Totally.
Joy. Be around somebody that's joyful. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Like, there's a whole bunch of those that I start, like gentleness. I was Division I. I was a very violent football player. I played sports and I was the mean goons, 6'5".
Yep.
Were you? That's funny. I just was on little side note. Anyways, I think that when you can truly be transformed so that you have that peace, you have that joy. Because I see successful salespeople that do the rat race, but there's always a pursuit of more. Christ, we think Christ is sufficient for us. Like, we're good. In fact, bring me to heaven. Like, I hope I get to do more work right now, but death is no loss for me.
Right.
And even if I'm wrong, then don't I win because I at least had the opiate? but I don't think I'm wrong at all. And so I have that piece, so then I can go into this knowing there's this funny thing that as you're talking about it, when you pray before your proposals go out, in fishing, I was on Leech Lake, this gigantic lake up here for a week, brought my fishing poles, and the bite was not on. Like, I can bring everything I have to that lake. There's these guys going out in $100,000, $70,000, $50,000 boats with 16 reels and everything. Now, they probably got walleye, but who makes the bite be on? Who switches the favor of somebody? As much as an accountant or anybody else might be totally utilitarian in how you can add value and will the customer see the value, turn it into money and turn it into dollars, and then I'll choose. There is this thing when they like you, but not just because they like you because you made them think you like the things they like, and not just because you went out and made them feel, read the Proverbs. If you want a trick to learn how to sell, you should learn the epistles, the letters that were written to the new believers and how they were supposed to act. Tough sales. By the way, you're hellbound. Here's the hope. But there's this funny thing where like Paul's like, hey, all of you guys, will you just keep your heads down, work hard, and make other people like think you're good? Like, just be good. But you read the Proverbs too. This whole idea, if you want to be great at sales, I think folks should dive into the Proverbs, really read them and look at them, and then really look into how did you. Now, I'm not saying that. I also think that Christianity, whatever. There's a whole. I don't want to get down that too much. But my thought is I think I see that in you, and I see folks that have successful businesses that are just aggressive. And they're trying to they're trying to extract. And I actually think there's probably an analogy to when people think of socialism, or you think about like the capitalist, us as business owners, we don't do the work our employees do. So we're taking from them. It's like, well, hold on a minute. No, we found these people with problems and we're trying to solve them and give you an opportunity. Anyways, there's so much that could go on there, but I think you can get so good at sales when you have a genuine the two things you said, go meet people and build relationships with them. And I think inside of that, how do you build relationships with people unless you're trying to genuinely love them?
Like if that
doesn't mean become their best friends.
It's not a relationship. Right? I mean, like you can go meet people, but it's not a relationship with them unless there's a real understanding and passion for actually service. Otherwise, it's just a personal transaction. And I think there's probably a fine line there that you can't really separate without just an internal look at yourself and what are your true goals surrounding that.
Dude, personal transactions versus relationships. I think that just that there, and so as a business owner, you have to do that at scale. When you are an entrepreneur, a salesman, you have to do that at scale. As you do that more and more, it gets much harder. Like, so I have a CRM that I keep notes so that I can build relationships with people. Like, how's that possible? But don't you think, I always just think what it is I learned this from Andy Stanley, love or hate Andy Stanley. He said, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And so I just think when you have somebody in front of you, listen, add value. And we're in this weird world where when you create content or when you're a business owner, we come in and I'm going to be your guide, which means that I have the best advice. Everybody else is stupid. Let me show you where you're going to go. Don't have that mindset. Just think about, hey, I believe that if I uncover where they're at, I have a perspective of where they could get. There's probably some sparks of intuition, of systematic VTR or VTOs. I might have training that can help them achieve their best interest, even if they don't know it, right? And that's
probably 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, the way business was done, where you looked at customers as a number, right? Where the customer was your product. How do you get to them as quickly and as fast as possible? Where there's a shift now to really that more personal and like a real relationship from a customer standpoint, right? And I see that across the board. Industry doesn't really matter. Like we have a bunch of pressure washing guys where like they kill it because they make content because they're relatable and they're personable online. like they crush in their local markets because of that. They're not just blasting out, as many door ads as they possibly can to just get the business and move on. They're like, hey, we're a real person. We're actually personable. We're actually trying to meet you and build up our community. Like, you're not just a number to us. You're an actual human being. I think that's the shift in the way businesses are being ran. And I think you're going to either see people be very successful, because I do believe in the Great Resignation. I think we're going to see a lot more people become self-employed. And I think if you can understand that you're trying to build a personal relationship with somebody or with your customer, you are going to be substantially better off in how they view you, frankly, but also in how your business performs. Because a transactional business anymore today is not going to be successful. Unless you're the giant telecommunications company. And I don't think we're probably speaking to any of you right now that may be starting one. And if we are, I'd love to have a conversation in 20 years when you take down MediaCom. So
Yeah. It's, there's a couple of things as I take a step back, part of what I'm trying to do is create some encouragement for folks that might not be geared. You have a successful business. You've done this. I don't want to be like, I've got this all figured out, but I've got a team of 7. We're kind of in this $1 million spot. We're trying to scale and grow. I want to make sure that everybody has a place in all this stuff. I had Nuance Tax and Accounting. They're a very successful business. I want to have this encouragement for people to see what are these core things that have to happen for you to actually be an entrepreneur. And so we already talked about, it's not enough to just be an accountant. You have to add tons of business value. We also talked about, when you sail out, you have to get enough front-end activity. That's kind of the cold way to say it, but enough conversations, enough Facebook messages, enough video views, enough Google ads, enough stuff in front of you so that you get enough analysis so you can run the meeting. We also talked about that you need to be excellent at drawing out of people, both their personal connection and relationship. I love the two words, relatable and personable. And finding common ground, building connection, building relationship with people, and then also finding out where they're stuck, hearing what their problems are, showing that, and you don't just utilitarian sell to people. But all of that's like, notice how this conversation, how did you succeed? We've evolved into almost hardly any accounting, but you do excellent accounting and tax and all of that. And it's all about the business and the people. And so I talk to so many new accountants. Now, we have a ton of contractors and builders. Those are kind of my favorite. I do this because I did this thing, and I see that accountants have this ability to really add value. But, you mentioned that you foresee that the bookkeeping and the tax compliance work shifting away as AI steps up and the tools get better. I think we're probably just
now, they already see all that's happening. Use like a QuickBooks Online or something like that. Like, the rules that they have are incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
don't you think as soon as QuickBooks does the math to find out they can make more money just selling the software rather than selling it to accountants, they'll probably switch.
The issue right now is they'll get you about 80% of the way. But the problem is if 2 little things go wrong, it can collapse that entire tower of cards. And that's today. I think, as a blockchain technology comes in where you buy something at Walmart and they record a sale, and then you just know that that's office supplies. Like, to me, that's the way I think things are moving. Now, I don't think it'll ever take away everything, but you've got things like Bill.com that use AI to read invoices to put it into your AP. Like, there are some really, really cool tools out there that take a lot of the manual work out. But to me, all of that is good to give you base information, but it does nothing to tell you what's going to happen or how to actually make decisions off of that. That piece, I don't see AI taking over anytime soon.
And business isn't changing. So it still comes, I always joke the 2 core things you got to do in business is you got to find people that have a problem that you can solve, present them, you got to get sales, and then you have to execute, whether you're doing a pressure wash or if you're doing accounting services or whatever. And then there's a lot that goes into that. But I loved, as I hear what I think you're doing to succeed, there's lots of very specific tactics and strategies, but at the heart of it is you're getting the front end activity, you're being a teacher, you're building connections, you're building relationships. And then on the back end, you're trying to create did you say you don't even make your team work on Fridays during the summer?
No.
That's awesome.
Not a lot happens for us on Fridays because our customers in the summer are busy. We have fairly limited interaction from May through August, I would say. So we don't work on Fridays. They're happy as a lark because they worked 45, 50 hours a week during tax season. And that's the max I would have you work. We don't work Saturdays. We don't work Sundays. But this is your little reprieve, right? This takes some time in the summer and refresh yourself. And because I'm not in this to suck out as much cash as I possibly can, because the long term for me is I want a really good team that I can have built up. The big struggle we have right now is people bought Drake. They didn't buy Performance Financial. And so that's the next hurdle that we're working through right now is how do you get and start to transition people, because it's relationships, right? And relationships are tough to just cold give over. And so we're really, really working through what does that transition look like, because there's only so much of me. And I need to start, as we continue to grow, spending more and more time on developing the staff internally and having helping to guide where we're moving towards. I'm the ideas guy. I can come up with ideas all day long, not great at implementing. And so I may need to make sure that there are people that can implement ideas that'll also tell me, hey, you're crazy right now. We just don't have the people. We don't have the resources, whatever. I need some of that in my life, or I will just go rogue. And so this is our next stage of your beginning stage is getting enough work to feed your family and to pay your bills and, to deliver excellent value. We've completed that, and I'm happy. This isn't a bragging thing to say. This is every business's next logical step is how can you actively make sure that people are happy with the transition, still giving them exceptional value and great service. But that's our current issue that we're spending a ton of time on. That's part of our VTO is how do we transition clients from Drake? And it's not in I don't like them. It's this is just a practical means for us to continue to grow this business. So
that's so great. I got two more things I want to talk about. I'm going to plant this seed because I want to add on to what you just said. The seed I want to talk about after this is how much of we talked a little bit about the faith. And you said there's a little bit of a dark time where you're praying and stuff. I kind of interrupted that. I'd like to unbox that more.
Yeah.
Whatever level of specificity you're willing to give to some of that, it would be great. But before we do that, I think what's really cool is what you just described there is something that my best leader that one of the best leaders. I've had some great leaders. I worked at Best Buy in Burnsville. I have an interview coming up with this guy. His name is Chad McDermott. And Chad McDermott was my general manager at the Burnsville store who just unleashed me. Now, funny enough, he's a Christ follower. He got his Masters of Divinity while he was running Best Buy. And he is so intelligent and so good at what he does. I can't wait for this interview. It's coming up in a week. But he led me on to read this book by Leighton Ford. It's called Leadership, and Leighton Ford's Christ-based leadership. And so what you just described there, the goal is to build disciples of yourself. You need someone that will take on the calling, wear the values, be transformed into the personship, carry forward the best, get rid of the worst, and 100%. Carry on the mission of transforming businesses. And it's just like what Jesus had to do with 12 dudes. And you read this board, it's called Transforming Leadership by Leighton Ford, Leigton. It is so good. And even if people think it's a joke, Jesus somehow, one dude and then 12 dudes somehow created this situation where this dude in Iowa, where there used to be bison running around everywhere, and this dude in Minnesota somehow have taken up the charge to want to build the same kingdom of heaven that he did. And in a way, what's really cool is this idea that, first off, I can't even unbox that whole book. It's so deep. It's there's a couple other guys that I've read some, and I'm like, holy cow, it's every paragraph's 19 pages of notes. But that's really what it comes down to is eventually you can't be the preacher, the main, it's really
100%.
proselytizing in a way. It's kind of funny. But what you want to do is you want to find people that will take up the charge, that will live your values. And I learned this at my church. They have, and
Yeah.
I kind of bring people through this, but it's a little bit different than a VTO, but it's called your vision culture. And it's kind of pinned to Jim Collins' books, Good to Great. There's some of it that was drawn out of all of his other stuff, but the idea is that an organization, at the foundation, you have your beliefs and values, and that's who you are.
Yep.
Once you establish those don't change. Then you have your purpose,
Yep.
why you do what you do, and then you have your mission. What are you set out to do? And your mission, and all of that,
completely
once
agree.
established, shouldn't change. You might morph a little here and there, but that's there. Then you have your strategies. And they say that your strategies of how you bring your mission to life should do three things. They should, A, drive your economic engine. You got to be able to make money, and that could be in nonprofit, it's different. B, it's got to be something that drives passion in you and others. And then C, it's got to be something that you and your team and your everything, your education, your abilities can be excellent at. So you should and that's how you bring your mission to life. And then you have your big, hairy, audacious goals, is what he would say. What are you setting out to do? And what BHAGs. And so I find that, like, when you get that established, all of a sudden it becomes easier to live a certain way, be a certain way, ask a certain. Now you got the tactics. You still got to ask great questions. You got to role play. You got to do all that. You still have to run great reports and everything. But I think that underpinning great business, what are your values, if you mind me asking, and how much of those types of things have you thought out before? I'd love to hear them.
Boy. So this was a part of that coaching that I was doing, is we would make sure that all the guys that were in the group, or not everybody that was in the group, had to have these mission, vision, core values. And so, I didn't have those right away, I would say, until I really started jumping into that. But, specifically, like I said, generosity is our first core value. We give first not for the expectation of a return, but because it's the right thing to do. Commitment, we follow through on our objectives to deliver value. We are advisors, so we bring real solutions to each of our clients. Integrity, we do the right thing always, in all capital letters. And then finally, we're passionate. We breathe life into every task.
Ooh, I like that.
So
those are good. What were they? One
generosity,
more? I have advisors,
commitment,
integrity,
advisor,
generosity.
integrity, passionate.
One of the things that Chad taught me was that you are either living or not living those values, and then teaching or exuding those values to others. And again, in drawing people up in a servant-based leadership thing, or you are, commanding and just trying to advance yourself. And Chad was one of those. I just want to share this because I think your values are this too, and I think these are based in Christ-based leadership. Really, Jesus came down and he could have just commanded everything. He could have come back on the back of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, made everybody bow to him, and he's like, "All right, I'm here. All of you dead." But what did he do? He came down to serve in the lowest form, took on human. He was completely God and yet completely human, and then let himself be butchered for our sins. And so this idea is, and I saw this in Chad, and what I really liked, I had a dream about this once. Every other manager that I had at Best Buy, they were fine people. But it was always like, okay, the next level up to promotion to corporate was like climbing over a wall, right? There was all these walls of promotion. And those guys, it always felt like what they would do is they would kind of like take the people underneath them. They'd report up to the other structure to climb above those people, to jump over the wall. Some of them would turn back and reach some people up. But what Chad genuinely did, Chad said, "Hey guys, let's build a pyramid." Like, he was always lifting other people up. It was this idea, I think it's called a mirror versus light, right? So when good things are happening, you shine the light on other people and show that that's what's happening, versus when it's somebody else failing, you always take ownership of it and you look in the mirror. And so I think what I've found here is that, and I got to see if we're still on here, make sure that my Wi-Fi and all these other connections are going. This whole idea is that when good things happen, You take ownership, or you shine it on other people, which means you get down on your knees and let them crawl up. And whenever there's a problem, you're the one that takes ownership of that problem.
Yeah, we're back
And
now.
I think I got you back here now. I just described a really compelling idea. I think it kept recording on mine, but Chad always got down on his knee and let you climb up, and he would help people get up to the next level. And then what happened was they saw that, and it was like, hey, by doing that, everybody's better. The culture of the team is like, Chad cares about me. I want to be a disciple of this. And he had this idea of relentlessly pursuing the best interests of our clients. Relentlessly pursuing the best, and that's become one of my values in our company. And so I think that what you just described there, your values are very much that, so that you are doing that to your team is doing it for the customers, you're doing it to the customers, and there's this cycle of lifting everybody up to try and achieve more.
Well, and
I think
your
I don't
systematic
know.
listeners,
Tell me,
like from my perspective on it, it's like trying to drive a car without a wheel. Like if you don't have these, if you don't have core values written down, like go take an hour and actually think about it a little bit, because what direction are you actually trying to go? If you jumped in a car and just turned it on and started hitting the gas pedal with no steering wheel, you're in for a ride. That ain't going to be a lot of fun, and it's probably going to end in disaster. If you don't have some of these little things written down, like where are you trying to go? And I think they help. I think by having some of those in place, it helps to kind of squash down some of those bad ideas of like, I'm just doing this for money, I'm just doing this for self, I'm just doing this for status, whatever that is. And it starts to help shift your focus to like, okay, there's more redeeming aspects to what I'm doing than just trying to collect a check, right? Like that, I'm actually trying to serve people, I'm actually trying to make a difference. And I'm actually trying to help everyone around us, not just me focused on me. And that's a tough little mindset shift. I was never a big mindset guy. I don't know. There's a part of me that never would like the mindset idea. But I think you have to, I acknowledge to it, maybe from a practical standpoint of like, okay, we got to think about what we are doing a little bit introspectively and why we're doing it. And if you don't have some of those things written down, or that you've put time and actually thought into, like, look, if this is going to be your career, it's probably worthwhile to have an hour think about that. Go for a walk and take a note, or, stand at your whiteboard and just jot some ideas down. Like, there's another practical side to that too, is it's like, I tell people all the time, like, because you're so actively involved in just doing the business and not being the manager of the business. So like there's that component to it, but there's also like, hey, what is valuable to you? Why are you doing what you're doing, and what drives you to do some of that? Take some time to think about some of those things. You're kind of accomplishing two goals, in my opinion. You're knocking out like, hey, I'm actually taking some time to focus on my business and not in my business. But also like, hey, let's steer the car in the direction we want to take it.
And it helps people know, how am I supposed to operate? How am I supposed to live? You don't have to tell people specific things to do when they know the type of person that they need to be and the type of objectives we're heading towards. I think you get yourself out of micromanagement. And it's it's funny, on our team, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I have people that really live our values, and they're down for this. And, and they're just great at it. And every organization, whether it was, I was working at Eaglebrook Church, which is a fantastic organization, Best Buy, some of the teams I was on Best Buy were fantastic, or there's a couple others that have been in there. But everybody that I notice, it's when you define those values so they know how to live, when you have a purpose, so like you're looking for people that have that passion, and that passion to want to do that. And like, it can't just be, I hate big business, I want to work on small business, but there's like I want to see these families succeed and communities. Like there's a little bit of Kool-Aid drink in there. Now, when you said mindset, I think it's totally, mindset is everything. It's, you're supposed to, but I don't like this mindset, because I think there's a worldly, it's set your eyes on things above, whatever's good, whatever's lovely. Like if we're made in the image of God, who is the creator, I think he placed inside of us this desire and this plan that we're supposed to bring to fruition, where we create the kingdom of heaven on earth. And I think helping businesses and people have amazing livings, having the communities be awesome, that's all like, yes, please. I'm that corny. Like, that's how I'm driven. You know, it's funny. I think that God has these plans for people. So you were prayerful, and I was prayerful through the whole thing, saying, God, what's your plan for my life? What plans do you want me to do? Like, genuinely, what should I do? Because I was like, I could go sell real estate. I can sell. Like, tell me. So anybody out there, I think if you just take God, what do you want me to do? And then there's this, you had smart people around you. I had smart people. Make a plan that's informed. Get perspective. I remember when I was trying to figure out what to do, I was like every big dog leader or like high potential person I could. Like I tried to have a meeting with them, not to sell them anything, but to be like, dude, what is their thing? Like, what is going on? And I read, and I was trying to master and read. But ask God what your journey should be. Make a plan, and then get advice about it. I think number 3, get the core behaviors of the plan. You got to sell 100%. And execute. You got to do these things. But then lastly, the thing that you did, you stayed faithful through it. Like, okay, the plan, God, I'm going to trust that you're going to make this work, not because I'm some prosperity gospel guy that God will cause all things to work together for those who love him and keep his commands. I'm going to love you, keep your commands. I think you're telling me to do this. Let me go do it. If not, Lord, then all right, I'll pivot. But if so, please, I'm going to stay faithful to this point. And you prayerfully ask every day to do that. Pick up your cross daily and follow him. I mean, you staying faithful through that are the things that, just like you said, then you can look back and say, I was faithful to my wife, faithful to my kids. I was faithful to the plan. I was faithful to God. And some people could think that's placebo effect. I don't think it is. I think very much. I think it's funny when you say you pray for the sale to come through. There's funny stories that pop up there. But I just think it's really cool, Drake. I'm thankful that you shared that with people. I hope that they get encouraged by that. If you're a business owner and you need a fantastic accountant, CPA to do tax planning, advisory, everything from job costing stuff to help people really be able to sell. There's so much that you add value as an organization that folks should be connecting with you. But any other last thoughts or encouragements or things that you want people to know?
No, you know what? I love this question, and I ask everybody this question. Rob, we're sitting down in 5 years. Where's Feedbackwrench at? What are kind of some of your goals and aspirations? I'll flip the interview here a little bit. It's one of my favorite questions to ask.
That's funny. Right now I got a nice team of 7. I also foresee giant portions of our business practically getting eaten up by AI tools. Right. But what I find to be the truth is that in the same way, Microsoft Word got a new competitor and it was Google Docs, and then they made Apple Pages, and like the technology changes, but what doesn't change is that people are stuck. They need to make the case that you should choose us. And so guide-based sales is always going to be there.
Sure.
Helping people capture their credibility, helping people build great businesses is always going to be there. So I'm trying to double and triple down. Where I foresee is I genuinely, our mission is to help business owners thrive. Right. Like that's kind of the upper level. I haven't nailed this down. It's also specifically, we want to help them generate a steady flow of their perfect customers. Right. And so whatever that is, right now it's video, SEO, website, ads, messaging. It's people, it's propaganda. And so I don't think that changes. What I'm trying to do right now is I think 5 years from now, I want to have a team of people who are really good at helping drawing out of our customers and put that together. Right. I want a really great team of creating and telling stories. Like the thing that gets me really passionate are a couple of things. There's a side of me that cannot stand the state and the way people are like K through 12 just feeds higher education. Higher education feeds them using money they can't bankrupt out of, and gives them a degree that is so not worth it that they're begging people to bail them out. And yet all the rich people I know, you go drive south of me here, every castle, about every fourth castle out in the woods is owned by a dude with a truck and a dip in. Like, I used to work for I used to work for Masonry A, learn that business, and now I got my own. All of them. And it's not just get into the trades. It's like so there's this thing, I want to share more stories.
Yeah, right.
Kind of like dirty jobs, but to tell people like, look.
Yeah.
Be weary, be careful about this. You click 3 things on your FAFSA, you're enslaved by $50,000 worth of debt, and the only path forward is into these little HR-driven giga corporations. Yep. And so I despise that because I think it's anti-value. And I think if you watch content on the internet right now, it's everywhere, when really I see so much more in the individuals than what they are. So I don't know what that means, if that means helping schools eventually or whatever. I mean, Feedbackwrench, I just want great places to live. But that gets me excited. I also get excited about encouraging people to follow Christ. Look at the world through a biblical lens. People don't understand. Go watch Stephen Meyer. Stephen Meyer, when you get in, and now I don't know if you...
I don't know him as...
I look at this earth, and it's like, it was so obviously riddled by a gigantic catastrophe.
Right.
The Bible and every other culture has a story of a giga world-covering flood catastrophe. Everything I look at, when I look outside, and I either put on the naturalist view, where over 6 billion years, The Rock produced Rob, who now makes this podcast, which is insane. Life has never come from non-life. Life always comes from life. So there's a genesis of some sort, and it's either the universe was everlasting and created everything, or maybe there's a intelligent being that was everlasting and created everything. It's one of the two. That's what Lennox versus Dawkins. So I get excited about that stuff because I truly, when you attack the idea of like, are we really transforming from whales to cows to, and what makes it plausible? 800 million years. It's like, we only know what's real, 7,000 maybe, and we still don't know what the weather was 500 years ago. Like, we really, your faith is placed in that nonsense? To me, like, and so at the risk of sounding ridiculous, I get really excited about when you lift the veil up and you look at that scripture. Yes, it was written by Jews a long time ago in Hebrew, and then it was written in Greek, and it was translated, but really, it's useful for all things in faith. And there are die, defend, and discuss beliefs. Die, defend, and discuss. And there are some things when you start realizing that the alternatives to the biblical worldview they're super racist. They're unhelpful. We're now, like, the more we study the brain, mindsets, all this stuff, that kind of the new agey thing, they're finding that, like, oh, wait, that's in the Proverbs. Oh, wait, that's the behavior that Christ said to do. Like, it's so, like, science is just unveiling the reality. Even space, people believe in alien. So I get excited about that, and I don't know what that means, and that's kind of underpinning how I look at what that means. I stick a 10 on everybody's head, and I think like everybody has. Anyways, I could go on about that, but Feedbackwrench specifically, I want to have great people who are passionate about this working, and if that means I'm huge, okay, God. If it means we're this size, okay. I just want to be faithful and be a good steward of every person. My stomach churns at every and we're doing well. Like I've seen 30-40% growth, about 25. I mean, we're about to hit $1 million this year. We did about 750,000 last year, and net profit's good. Like, things are going well. This year's been all about process. Process. But really, I don't know. I have 4 kids too, though. I mean, like, we work, we go to church. I volunteer at my church. We bring our kids to school, and we make sure that these kids and
Oh, that's awesome.
Try and be a good dad.
I love it. I love hearing that. So that's my favorite thing, like, literally in the world. I could talk about those things. Like, I could take you down another hour rabbit hole in like 4 different topics there, because that's what I'm passionate about. That's the fun thing to talk about. So if you don't have a good little question in your back pocket, just start asking people where they're going to be in 5 years, because you get to learn a ton about them, what they're passionate about, and then now you've got an avenue to go explore. Like, that's the key piece right there.
That's so good.
Step
that's
around.
so
there
good.
You go. There's a little nugget for you.
That's great. Well, everybody, we hope that this is helpful. Drake, super honored to serve you in our business, to hear your story more, and we'll have to keep it going. And folks, we'll have this on our podcast, YouTube channel. We'll have some shorts and stuff coming up, and got a couple of really. I'm pouring into my interviews now, so it's August 2nd of 2024. Expect to see far more entrepreneurs. I got all sorts of cool people. Drake, if you got anybody cool, that would be fun to three-way interview, man. That'd be fun.
Well, I'll
let
do a
me
little
know.
thinking on that. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Man.
Thanks, Rob.